Hello and welcome to Money, Money, Money. I'm Sumaira Abidi, and today the focus is on women and their finances. How to plan specifically for certain life stages, and not just that, equally important is how to navigate and negotiate your career. Joining me is Priti Rathi Gupta, founder of LXME, which is India's first financial platform dedicated exclusively for women. Priti, always a pleasure to speak with you. And we were just discussing before the show started about how there is a growing acceptance around this issue, right? With women, a lot more women are taking charge, a lot more of them are becoming financially independent, and happily so, right? But an equal number or perhaps more, for every one woman who's probably doing it, managing her finances right now, there would be perhaps tens or hundreds who are not yet got that opportunity. So why is it particularly important for women to look at their life stage and therefore plan finances accordingly?
Thank you, Sumaira, for having me on a show. Equally a pleasure always. One of the biggest reasons I love this show is because it's called Money, Money, Money. And I think this is something that we should encourage women to say these words very often. We shy away from saying them because of our social conditioning. So it's always a pleasure. And I think with respect to your question, look, in LXME, we've actually, we have today about 100,000 plus women on the platform. And when we speak to them, we realize that the biggest bottleneck for women in creating wealth, or at least having financial equality, is essentially the life stages that they go through. Whether it is getting married, whether it is having a child. COVID showed us where women had to take a back step when it came to, taking the onus of family responsibility. So all of these really affect their earning capabilities. And then, of course, there are, several other parameters. For example, women reach their career peak by the age of 40, whereas men continue to grow in their careers till they're at the age of 50. So even the ability to earn, or the span to earn, is far lesser when it comes to women. We actually did a study, very interesting study, Sumaira, where we spoke about where we actually measured that if a man and a woman are in the same industry when they begin their career at the same level, and we particularly spoke about the tech industry because we are so deeply embedded there, we realized that women, by the time they retired, had actually 1/10 the amount of wealth, or they had been able to create 1/10 the amount of wealth that men were able to create. That's the sort of huge disparity, right? And therefore, women need to take into account that these life stages, or these, stages where they might have to take a back step, or where the earning reduces, this will happen. And this will, in effect, it will affect their financial security, the ability of wealth creation. For example, you have a child, right? You take a maternity break. Have you really planned for your financial independence even during that time? So there are a lot of things that women need to actually take into account when planning their money journey or their financial security and wealth creation, which is actually very unique to women, which typically men don't have to think about.
Fair enough. In fact, you mentioned one of the important life stages, which is going on maternity leave. But, now the government mandates that you get 6 months of paid leave, right? Therefore, does a woman still need to be financially prepared to go on maternity leave? And, how would you recommend in terms of the reintegration back after those 6 months?
Yeah, so actually, when you take a maternity break, it's not, your cost actually typically increase. So first of all, you yourself, your wellness, your, just your medical bills, etc., all of that increases. Considering that a family may come together, your partner and you yourself will come together and share those expenses. However, there are certain expenses that are particularly, for a woman, and today's woman is aspirational. So you want to get back to work, you want to upskill yourself. For example, we're no longer in the times where if you were sitting at home, there's nothing else you can do while when you're taking that maternity break. That could be very, very effectively used to upskill yourself. We live in a digital world, so upskilling by way of taking new courses, learning whatever next that you want to, that time can be utilized. However, all of this comes at a cost, and therefore you need to plan for that as well. It's a huge opportunity actually for women to use that window, once your first 2 months you've settled down, to use that window to actually start upskilling themselves, upgrading themselves. That helps for better integration also. While there is a lot of talk, Sumaira, about really taking that 6 months off or 8 months off, and rightly so if a woman feels very strongly about it, my personal experience, and maybe a lot of the mothers, younger mothers, especially the millennial mothers that I speak to, they actually enjoy the fact that if they are able to, or they have the opportunity to do flexi hours. Again, if you're an online, work from home, even if you're able to work a couple of hours, it just keeps you in touch with what's happening in your existing workplace. So there are a lot of ways that a woman can plan this. Just the financial part as well as the upskilling and, joining the workforce again.
Okay, and since we're speaking about, mothers, there is a large segment of women who are single mothers. Financially, what are the important goals for them? And, what is it that they should look at or plan for vis-a-vis just about any other woman?
I think very, very pertinent question, Sumaira, and I think we are increasingly seeing a society where we see a lot more single mothers. And I think one of the biggest sort of worry for a mother then is the child's education. Again, typically to raise a child in India, for an average family, the cost is about anywhere between 70 to 80 lakhs. And half of that is actually the education cost. I think the one thing a single mother would not want to do is compromise on the upbringing or the education cost of her child. And therefore, I think that becomes a big bucket of her financial plan. How do you put aside money every month or every time that you're able to for your child's higher education? Again, within education, it's not just higher education. We've seen today, for example, even in that 50%, the 35, 40 lakhs cost that, that is spent on a child's education, a lot of it is actually tuition fees, which begins even in early years these days. And it's, you want to send your child to a private school, you want to send them to the best schools. Invariably, the whole tuition piece is something that is very, very common. How do you even plan for that? And therefore, for example, in LXME, we've actually created a child's education fund. What it does is it allows you to put aside money, use that because, the child education loan, business is really become very large because of this. So if you can use that as a collateral to really borrow for the child's early education, if needed, then it just makes your cost of borrowing much lower. And all the while you're not breaking your savings and you're really creating a fund which can then suffice for higher education. But it's very important for a woman to plan this. And it's not just about your child. It's also about your own, there are certain things that you need to do as a mother. For example, do you have the right safety nets? Because if the child is dependent just on you or your source of income, have you created the right safety nets, whether it is an emergency fund that you've made sure you have, taking the right insurance, which a lot of, by the way, we did this survey, the LXME Women and Money Power Survey, where we found that almost 60% women in our country have no insurance, no health insurance and no term or life insurance. Health insurance is very, very important for every woman, every person to take. But a woman even more so, and a single mother even more important. So having, the right safety nets that are created, and the ability to then create a financial plan, which then allows you to put your money into asset classes like equities, because you already have these safety nets. So I think that planning gets even more rigorous for a single mother. And thankfully, we have all these tools today where she can efficiently use them to, do this journey.
Okay. And Preeti, the other, big goal for just about anyone is retirement planning. Is it significantly different for women and men?
Absolutely, Sumaira. Like I said, so first of all, let's look at, a little bit in terms of the statistics, right? Women typically outlive men on an average by 4 to 5 years, which means a longer retirement. Like I explained before, by the time they retire, they actually tend to retire with a lesser corpus because of the money choices that they've made. Typically, women put money, all their savings into, asset classes which are not beating inflation. And therefore, the growth of that money is not enough to sort of take them through the retirement. So definitely, I think women need to look at that retirement planning far more aggressively and early on, as soon as they start earning their money. Unfortunately, again, as per our survey, less than 2% women are even saving. I'm not even talking of investing, but even saving for their retirement. So the dependence on a partner or a parent or, a child is very, very high. And in today's day, that is not something that you can really go by. So it is very important for a woman to start her retirement planning as soon as she starts earning, or as soon as she started saving some amount of money, beginning small, putting that money into, whether it's doing SIPs into equities so that you're able to beat inflation. As well as, once again, the importance of creating these safety nets. The first thing we advise women is create an emergency fund, get your insurance in place, and then start building your retirement fund. Emergency funds and retirement fund are two very, very important financial goals that every woman should have. And unfortunately, this is somewhere that women are really lagging behind.
All right, Preeti, but it's heartening that a lot more people are talking about it. At least that conversation at least has started. A quick break. Preeti will continue to stay on with us, and on the other side, we'll talk about not just how to financially plan for various life stages, but how to earn more, how to maximize your career opportunities. All of that is lined up next. Stay tuned. Hi, welcome back to Money, Money, Money. With us is Priti Rathi Gupta, who's the founder of LXME, India's first financial platform dedicated exclusively for women. And we've been talking about so far, how it is important to plan for some of the key life stages for women and why particularly for women. Okay, now let's talk about another subject, which is, careers. How do you do better? How do you progress, as fast as your male counterparts? And Preeti, I don't have to spell it out, but I think anybody would know about this gender pay disparity, right? The gap that exists. For a woman, is it important to also negotiate salaries and promotions? How do they do it? And, does it work?
Sumaira, I think, the Gen Z is a great inspiration for all of us, because I think for them, there is no gender bias, especially for girls and for women in their head. I think what we've so far seen is that women, there's huge amount of self-doubt, right? There is this, terminology which we use very often when we're mentoring women, which is know your worth. You should know what your counterparts in the industry or within the organization earn. We rarely talk about money. We will not ask these questions. We will not find out. We will not come to the table. And most importantly, I feel, even before coming to the table, raise your hand to say, if this is an opportunity that is opening up, then I'm ready to take this on. I think we sort of discount ourselves even before, and we say, maybe I'll not be good enough. Maybe I will not be able to do it. So I think, first of all, get rid of all of that self-doubt and then come to the table. It's very important to really, come to the table and talk about, negotiate about your packages, salary, ESOPs these days, whatever it is that that includes or makes up your package. I mean, I have a very recent example. My very young son was applying for a job somewhere, and they asked him, "How do you justify your salary?" And he said, "You know, these are the 4 things that I can use, and I can tell you this is the value that I'm creating." And the first thought in my head was that had there been a woman, it would probably, she would find it very difficult to do this. So I think really laying out very logically and saying what is the value you're creating or bringing to the table. So raising your hand, knowing your worth, and really coming to the table to really talk about it and negotiate.
Okay. And another area in the corporate life where, I mean, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, things are changing, where women get a little bit left behind is networking. Is it a double-edged sword, and how do you go about it?
I don't know why it is called a double-edged sword. I think networking is a must. Typically in Western economies, we actually see that, for example, there are, a lot of the countries, Thursdays are meant for networking within the industry, within your organization, which we as a country, I don't think really encourage organization-wise, where there's no differentiation between men and women. Networking is a very, very important tool, and it is a must for women. I think the reason we lag behind is because we multitask. There is the household responsibility. So we are, at the end of the day after work, it's more like we're more keen to say, okay, let's go back home because there's responsibility there also. I think the fact that we are multitaskers, I think managing time and really keeping time aside for networking within your industry is very important. When I say know your worth, how would you even know if you're not really going out there and talking to a lot of people? There's also a lot of benefit of networking in terms of upskilling, understanding what is new within the industry, making those connections. And I think what I've really found in the networking space, something that's very valuable, is the ability to connect to mentors, the ability to be a mentor to mentees. I think this is a very, very enriching part of life, which we women shy away from. So I hugely, sort of recommend and encourage women to really go out there and make time for networking.
Okay, and Priti, you're an entrepreneur yourself. There are many others who will probably be first-generation entrepreneurs. Some of them looking at startup, funding issues. What is it that you'd like to tell them?
Well, I think first of all, when you become an entrepreneur, you leave the gender at the door. As a woman, you yourself need to remove that thought completely that, okay, I'm going in as a woman or I'm raising money as a woman. There will be times when on the other side, there will be questions about, how will you manage? What if you get married? What when you have children? I think those questions are becoming lesser and lesser because a lot of women have really proven, their mettle when it comes to becoming an entrepreneur. But I do think that the entire ecosystem, and there is a lot happening, right? You have a lot of funds that are allocated now for women founders. For example, Lakshmi is right now part of a Google accelerator, which is for women founders, where they've shortlisted 20, startups which are founded by women, led by women founders. So there's a lot that's happening in the ecosystem that you should make use of. I think the most important sort of piece here is that, the stereotype that industries have created, whether it is you're a woman or, how will you do this? Or if you're a certain age, do you have a male co-founder? The tech person needs to be a male all of that is very fast and very quickly dissipating. But when you go out as an entrepreneur, it's as much your responsibility to prove that, to come to the table for that, to assert that. And if you've got funding to really, make them sort of really prove to your investors that there is no difference when it comes to a man or woman when, once they turn entrepreneurs or run businesses.
Okay, Priti, just one more question since we have a little bit of time. Any practical tips besides all that we have spoken about? Any practical tips you want to leave us with for women?
Absolutely. I mean, this is something that we do day in, day out, right? And I think the first important thing that we tell women, especially when it comes to finance or money management, is begin by building safety nets for yourself. They are very important. We as women we are not risk averse, but we are very risk aware. I think the minute we have safety nets created, it increases our ability to take that leap, to jump higher, to get into maybe newer asset classes that actually give us that, the sort of returns that we ought to get for all our financial goals. Second is discipline. One of the things that I see very often is that women do start that journey, but say you've put money into an asset class which is very volatile, whether it is equities or gold, you tend to get very shaken up. So once you've decided that this is where, you've put your money, essentially all asset classes, for example, equities are meant to be long-term investment asset classes, then just keep that discipline. If it's an SIP that has to be done, just keep that discipline of doing it. Cut out all the noise around you. Markets are falling, markets are rising, all of that, right? There's a lot of noise. Third, I think women need to know that there are at least 2 or 3 goals, financial goals, that they need to have control over. I see in a lot of families, whether it's between a husband and wife or between, a family where the daughter is earning, these decisions are completely left to the partner, which is fine if you found a middle path. But at least when it comes to your retirement and emergency funds, these are something that you should own, because this is about your financial security. And I think fourth is just keep it simple. I think there is a lot of fear around money management, taking financial decisions. There is a very, very simple way of doing it. Today, within LXME, we say even within mutual funds, your equity, debt, and gold mutual funds, you can make a very effective financial plan, added by just enough insurance. So I think these are the typical, the 4 very strong sort of practical tips that we give out and that I'm happy to share.
Priti, thank you very much for joining in. Always a pleasure. And, for everybody who's been watching, I hope this has been useful for you. We're going to wind up, but do stay tuned. The news continues with CNBC-TV18.